Yo! What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to my world-famous whiteboard lessons. And in this episode, in this edition, what I'm going to do is discuss with you the, let me Vanna White this, secrets of Antarctica there. And the reason I'm discussing this with you today is actually for multiple reasons. One is because obviously there's just a whole lot of stuff that we're not told about Antarctica that it's very important to learn. The reason it's very important to learn is because it helps connect a whole lot of dots as to why the world is the way it is and how it got there. And also another reason that I really want to do this video is because if you've been following my news updates, you know that I've been including Antarctica quite a bit. And the reason I've been including a lot of Antarctica news stories that have been coming out and seeding our consciousness in the mainstream media is because along the lines with all that crap they don't tell us about Antarctica, given that the mass population doesn't know a lot of these things, if they disclose that information about Antarctica to the mass public, there would be a very easy way for them to obfuscate some of the information or basically leave some stuff out, wow the public with what they do tell them, and then keep the rest secret. You kind of see what I'm saying there? They'll give everybody a little piece of the pie, but they'll keep the rest secret because they don't want a full disclosure. They want to try to avoid telling all as much as they can. So I'm going to help you understand some stuff about Antarctica. So if any type of disclosure from the powers that be were to come into the public and have an agenda behind it, you would be able to sniff out that agenda a lot easier by knowing the knowledge of Antarctica. So basically that's why, if you catch my drift. If you understand what I'm saying, just nod your head behind the screen. Now, I divvied this up into two different sections. You see here, history redo. So there's a lot of unlearning and relearning we're going to do here. I divvied it up into recent and ancient history. Recent history all involves, and I have a timeline here that I'll discuss with you, all involves kind of what really went on around World War II. And the ancient history describes kind of the past few 100,000 years and what's really gone on in our solar system. So let's begin. Recent history, and you can see my timeline here. It goes from about the 1930s to about 1950. And there is a massive relearning curve that we're all going to have to do about World War II. Because it begins here in the 1930s. So in the 1930s, before World War II even occurred, various secret societies in Germany were obsessed with finding what's called occult knowledge or occult science. Now, I hope you can see these words. I hope I didn't write too small for you to see on the video. But occult. If you don't know what occult means, occult comes from the Latin word occultare, which means to keep secret. So this means basically secretive science and secretive knowledge that the powers that be want to keep secret for their own gain, and then they keep the rest of the world ignorant. Occult. Now, what this occult knowledge had to do with very advanced technology. Because in the 1930s, the Germans knew they didn't have as much men as the Americans and the Allies. They knew that they didn't have as many tanks and not as much of an industrial capability of like America per se. So what the Germans were obsessed with was finding what's called qualitative superiority instead of quantitative superiority. Those are basically very big words to say they wanted quantity, they wanted more advanced stuff than more men and more boots on the ground. So that's why they were obsessed with finding this secretive science. And what they did was then, in the 30s, a couple of the secret societies in Germany, such as the Vril, V-R-I-L, the Thule Society, T-H-U-L-E, I believe there's another one called the Order of the Black Sun. They all kind of worked in tandem together with the Nazi regime as well. So there's a lot of different, secret societies, as is now around the world, kind of same concept. But these secret societies were all working together in Germany to find this occult science, and what they did was they actually sent a research expedition to the Himalayas and to India, because in India, if you've ever read I believe it's the Mahabharata, or I know it's just ancient Vedic scriptures, I'll just leave it that general because I don't know the exact name, but in the ancient Vedic scriptures, there was reference to what was called Vimanas. V-I-M-A-N-A. Vimanas. Vimanas, in these scriptures, it literally said that these were craft that had the ability to control gravity, and they used counter-rotating Mercury to do so. So this will get into a video on physical alchemy that I'm planning on doing soon here. But basically, when you counter-rotate Mercury and shock it with electricity, it can create a gravity-canceling field around it. So that's basically it. Pretty freaking advanced for the 1930s, right? That's why they were obsessed with finding it. So they went to the Himalayas. They found a bunch of scrolls, a bunch of texts, and things like that. They brought them back to Germany. They brought back monks and people to decipher these texts with them, and they did so. So that was one of the ways that they were able to obtain this very advanced science in the 1930s. Another one of the ways that I do want to mention involved channeling extraterrestrials. And I'm not kidding you with what I say there. So what this secret society did, the Vril was one of them operating in Germany at the time. They worked with a woman, I believe a group of women, but I knew one of them, her name was Maria Orsic, O-R-S-I-C, Maria Orsic. And she was able to actually channel information from, I forget where or what non-terrestrial group or whatnot. But anyway, she was able to actually channel directions to build these anti-gravity craft, these New Age Vimanas per se. So I just wanted to throw that in there because there's multiple ways that they found this occult science, but they did. And they were actually able to build what's been known as the German Bell craft. And actually quite a few different prototype flying discs, giant flying discs. According to some reports, big ones, hundreds of foot, potato, hundreds of feet across with turrets and things like that on them. So they were able to build some pretty neat stuff. Now, fast forward to 1945. World War II ends. Of course, remember, the winners always get to write the textbooks. So did World War II actually end? Part of this occult science that the Germans found involved Antarctica. And it involved ancient build-outs in Antarctica. We'll get more into that down here, but I just wanted to tell you that because the Germans, once they found out what was actually in Antarctica, they went to build out down there. And during the 30s, they actually built some bases in Antarctica. They took their U-boats down there and built it out. Now, when World War II, quote, ended, the Germans escaped to Antarctica. This is the part that's not told. Let me clarify. This is the part that's not told. World War II did end, but only in Europe, okay? Because like I said earlier, the quantity versus quality thing, the Germans could not overcome the Americans' manpower. They just had more men, more tanks, and the Germans weren't able to build enough of those really big, really, cool anti-gravity craft in time to combat that. So the Germans did lose in Europe. But this is the part that's not told. The Germans were able to escape to Antarctica in around the end of World War II. Now, what occurred at this point, we have the Allies, right, overtake Europe, the Germans in Antarctica. This begins the discussion of what's called Operation Paperclip. Now, many of these people watching my videos probably know what Operation Paperclip is, but just for a quick refresher, this is basically an operation that lasted from 1945 to 1951, where about 3,000 Nazi scientists and researchers were basically shuttled into America from Germany. And this is pretty well known. I mean, it's, I don't know, on Wikipedia and mainstream media and stuff like that. It's just, they don't connect the dots for you. So that's why I'm doing it here. So Operation Paperclip began when World War II ended in 1945. Thousands of Nazi scientists, the ones that didn't get shuttled into Antarctica, the Americans wanted their brains, essentially, so they were brought into America, they were debriefed, and some of them spilled the beans. And some of them said, oh, a lot of our colleagues freaking escaped to Antarctica. Once the Americans caught wind of that, Operation High Jump occurred. Now this is really, really important because a lot of people that are beginning their truth-seeking process, they know of Operation Paperclip because there's quite a bit of information out there about that. But Operation High Jump, there's not so much information out there about that. And even less that I see when people connect the dots between the two, which is very important to do. What Operation High Jump was, it was commissioned in December 1946, I believe. And it was led by the Americans by a man named Admiral Richard Admiral Beard. He was tasked with bringing 5,000 men, 13 ships, 40 aircraft, and a whole buttload of equipment all down to Antarctica. Now, this was on official record tasked as being a scientific exploration. But tell me how many scientific explorations require a battle group with 5,000 men and 13 ships? None of them, I'll tell you that. So, of course, since World War II was on public record ended, they had to task that as being a scientific exploration, but it wasn't. It was a military assault versus the Germans that they knew were in Antarctica. So when Admiral Byrd got down there, he got down to Antarctica in late January, early February of 1947, he encountered the German resistance. But the important point is that he had no frickin' idea that the Germans had big-ass UFOs. So he got down there, and the Germans attacked him. They actually sunk a couple of their ships and basically stunned this whole battle group because these guys had no idea what they were in for. And all they really knew was the Germans were down there, but they didn't know what they had. So these Bellcraft, these basically electrogravitic craft, attacked the Americans, destroyed them. Admiral Byrd had to retreat. He actually retreated back to South America, and he is on record by a Chilean newspaper. He was interviewed soon after his return, and he was quoted as saying, "The enemy has blazingly fast ships that can fly from pole to pole at an amazing speed." Something to that effect. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he said pole to pole at an amazing speed. He was literally talking about, oh my god, I don't know what the heck they have, but it blew our shit up. And that was Operation High Jump. Now, you know, with the Americans getting destroyed, the Americans knowing that they don't have quite as much qualitative superiority, you could say, that essentially forced their hands. Once they knew what they were dealing with, they were like, oh crap, you know, we don't have that really neat stuff. And then this occurred in 1952, kind of towards the end of Operation Paperclip, a little bit after Operation High Jump. I just want to throw this in there because it's a really interesting point. There was a flyover of a whole group of UFOs right above Washington, D.C., okay? And you can YouTube the video of this. It's plain as day. It was front page news in the Washington, D.C. paper the next day as well. Not aliens. It was not non-terrestrials. This is a very important point to make in that many, not all, definitely not all, but many UFO sightings that are reported are man-made craft. Okay? These were man-made, the ones that flew over the Capitol, and they were German craft. They were German Bell craft, literally right over the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and what that did was that forced the Americans' hand, because the American military, they did not want to disclose the reality of UFOs and all that stuff because they didn't want to cause a huge hysteria in America, and they also knew that they would probably get burned at the stake if they were to be like, oh, you know, here's this that we weren't telling you about for a while, right? So they didn't say anything, and their hand was essentially forced by the Germans to say, hey, we're going to infiltrate you suckers. That's exactly what they did. So that essentially put the ending phases on Operation Paperclip. End of that occurred. The Germans were then able to infiltrate right into America, and that's exactly what happened after World War II. The Germans never lost. They won. They won World War II. And remember, like I said, the winners write the textbooks. So the textbooks are written as if the Germans lost, and oh my gosh, you know, nobody even questions that the frickin' Bush family had Nazi origins, and the propaganda campaigns that we're seeing in America right now are directly, you know, point to point what they were in Nazi Germany. So it's, people don't see that stuff. It's really interesting. So, boom, Germans officially infiltrate America. And then the rest is history. Dwight D. Eisenhower in his farewell speech called out the military-industrial complex. John F. Kennedy tried to battle him. He got boop, and you know, the rest is history there. So that's essentially the unlearning and relearning that we have to do about World War II. Okay, completely involves Antarctica, involves a lot of very advanced science, involves a lot of stuff that you know, with the wrong perspectives would go right over people's heads, but that's why it's so important to learn it, is so we get the right perspectives. So we can't be duped and stuff doesn't go over our heads. So, boom, there's recent history. And then ancient history, I'm just going to cover really quick. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I'm still trying to put the pieces together about it myself, and there's a lot of other resources I can port you towards for the time being that would just be much better use of your time than me trying to bullshit you in this video. But ancient history, just a few bullet points about that. There used to be an ancient planet in our solar system. And this actually has a whole lot of scientific data and scriptural data to support that. You know, from both sides. There's a scientist from NASA, his name's Dr. Tom Van Flandern, I think is how you say his name. He came up with what's called the exploding planet hypothesis. And I'm going to do another video, you know, on this very soon here. There's another thing that's very important to understand. There used to be an ancient planet in our freaking solar system. And it goes by many names. It went by, some people called it Tiamat, I believe, if you follow Sitchin's work. I think Dr. Tom Flandern just called it the exploding planet. It's been called Phaeton, I believe, in like Russian religious scripture, mythology or something. Electra might have been another name. Lots of different names. But anyway, there's a planet. And it was right where the asteroid belt was, and Mars was a moon of it. Makes a whole lot of freaking sense, because when NASA gets all of their pictures of solar systems that are deep in space, why don't any of them have a freaking asteroid belt? Ours is like the only one. And where did it come from? You know, of course, conventional science, they're like scratching their heads. I don't know, maybe we'll find out someday. Here's some crappy theory in the meantime. But the asteroid belt essentially are the remnants of an exploded planet. Mars was a moon of it. And when that planet exploded, by some estimates approximately 500,000 years ago, there was also a civilization on it. And that civilization then had to obviously move because their planet got blown up. Some of them were able to escape. And the survivors then crash landed onto Antarctica. And this was, by some estimates, probably 50 to 60,000 years ago. So wherever they left, whether they went to Mars or somewhere else, eventually they ended up on planet Earth, and they ended up in Antarctica, and they crash landed there. Now, also keep in mind, approximately 50 to 60,000 years ago, Antarctica was at a very different spot on our planet. And this is due to pole shifts. Both magnetic pole shifts and geophysical pole shift. Geophysical meaning the Earth, literally, Antarctica was in a different place. Then due to a crust displacement, geophysical pole shift, the Earth literally rotates, and Antarctica went to the South Pole. Flash froze that way because it got colder really quick. So Antarctica, basically the survivors crash landed on Antarctica, and then a pole shift occurred and froze their remnants down there, froze basically their ancient civilizations. We'll just put some pyramids here because it froze their pyramids. And some evidence, interesting evidence regarding this is what's called the pre-Rice map. And this was written in 1513 by a man who, Ottoman Empire. He was an Ottoman admiral. And one of those, but he was in the Ottoman Empire. He wrote, he drew up this map in 1513 that showed Antarctica, blatantly showed Antarctica, and it showed it as being a completely ice-free landmass. Now, he wrote this he didn't write it. I don't believe he wrote it from exploring it. He wrote this map based off previous intel, based off previous knowledge that he had. So that really makes you question, well, that occult knowledge, I mean, there's occult knowledge that's been hidden from us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's been hidden from us by the very people that crash landed here. Now let's tie some dots in together. The people that crash landed here on Antarctica, they then were able to spread out across the planet and set up different civilizations. These people had elongated heads, which is why in, for instance, the South American cultures, and especially the Egyptian culture, they show their gods as being people with elongated skulls, was because these extraterrestrials that crash landed here on Earth set themselves up to be gods. They had a lot of occult knowledge that they've always kept secret, and they've always influenced, they've always, what you could say, built up the powers of this planet. So they've really been the ones that have, started the Vatican and the Catholic Church, and now they basically are in the deepest halls of power that own financial, banking, military, all the systems on this planet. So that's, and they do, they believe themselves to have of a divine right over this planet because they trace themselves from that non-terrestrial origin. So lots more you can read here. I'm like jumping around from point to point to point, but I'm trying to get the picture for you guys. Obviously David Wilcock's been dumping a lot of info on this lately. There's a lot more information out there as well on, for instance, the exploding planet and the pre-read map and Antarctic ancient civilization. So do a lot of research into it. It's really interesting. But this is all, this directly ties into this, in that the Germans, they wanted to go find those ancient civilizations in Antarctica, and that's why they brought their stuff down there. And that's also why currently, now in this day and age, there's a lot of secrecy around Antarctica. If you want to visit there, you actually cannot charter an American plane. You have to charter a Russian plane. They don't let ships in very much area around there. They don't let scientists, conventional scientists in very many places there. And there's just a whole lot of freaking secrets. And a lot of those secrets have to do with a lot of this stuff. And as we go on, as we move on from here, what we're going to see in the mainstream media, this kind of brings me back to my why we need to learn this and discussion of soft disclosure. We're going to see more and more articles come out about Antarctica in the mainstream media. And it's very important to be aware of all of this because, again, the powers that be, so many people are waking up and so many people are becoming aware of what's going on that the powers that be know that their time is getting very short, so they need a card to play to wow the population to try and distract them while keeping the rest of what's going on secret. And if you know what's really going on, well, there's no secrets that they can try to dupe you with. You see what I'm saying? Now you might get a little more of an understanding as to why I'm saying the whole partial disclosure bait and switch thing, as opposed to like 20 minutes earlier in this video. So that's why. That's why it's so important to learn all this stuff and learn all of this occult knowledge, all of this secret knowledge, is so we cannot be screwed yet again. Okay? I always say the path to freedom is a mental one. This is a mental war we're in this day and age. So power up, guys. Done.